What do you guys think is the most important for a successful program? Is it the organizational model like we just discussed? Is it the support and buy-in of the leadership for the direction and your goals? Is it, the quality of the work you're doing? Is it the integration with others and the collaboration? What makes your program success possible?
I think it starts with an orientation to the client instead of the product. I think it starts there. I think when you stop pushing product outcomes and start really making a commitment to listening to your customer first and then figuring out what you can do to help them, whether that be a product, a service, developing an experience that doesn't exist today.
So an external orientation to solving customer problems as opposed to an internal orientation of pushing out your message.
And then I think you start organizing your organization differently, and it starts to snowball from there, right? Then I think you start having the right culture to go with it. Then you start using, all of it falls into place at that. But if you're still just going to push product and uptake on your product, then it won't work. It won't.
Sure.
So what you said, and I, again, I spoke about this earlier today, storytelling, I think, the ability, so the safety, the safe space in order to craft the story based on customer feedback, and then sell the story to whomever you need to sell it into. And understanding your audience and explaining the way that, explaining it in a way that the people will understand, who need to understand, it will resonate for. I think that is very organizational driven.
Yep.
And so I think it does come back to org structure, but being able to describe what you're doing in I see again earlier, outcomes instead of outputs.
Yep.
Is vitally important.
Yeah, that outcomes instead of outputs was a part of a conversation we had in Rusty's huddle earlier. I think it was a really important point that, focusing on where you're going instead of the little pieces that you're going to complete to get there. So what do you guys think?
I don't think I'm really in a position to, we're talking
To talk about success?
Yeah.
That's fair.
But yeah, we don't run the software programs, or we don't run the optimization programs within the company. We're just providing the technology to help them enable it.
What characteristics have you seen of the more successful companies, clients that you work with that use your tool? Do they have a shared characteristic about them, or something that they're all doing?
They're all awesome. So
all of our clients are awesome.
No,
If you're listening,
yeah, they're all awesome, and
Tap.
we learn from them more than they learn from us, and no, I just think it's like there's a lot of it's like magical thinking around various statistical methodology, this, that, or the other thing, and maybe I shouldn't say this because we provide this technology, but that is a small component. The main component is if they have a sort of a formal, robust process for getting ideas from the employees, and a strong process for getting that information embedded into the product or the application. That's the main thing. And so it's just a formalized process for doing that. And, we are just sort of, I don't want to say bells and whistles, but we help enable that, and we help keep everyone sort of honest. But the main value is in that structure. And so we just sort of help facilitate that. But outside of that structure, just throwing in some sort of technology is, again, is almost certainly going to be a complete waste of time.
So as a side note, for those of you in the room, next time we do this, I'm going to get you guys bingo cards with common sayings, because that was one that you said.
I'm going to double hit here.
Magical thinking, right? That would have been one. Storytelling is one. And you haven't said it yet, but I'm waiting for Gary to say something along the lines of, I agree, and, right before,
That's the polite way to do it.
it is, and it's beautiful, because it's right before he contradicts you. So on that note, Gary, do you agree?
Yes. These guys have, what these guys said is definitely true, and I'll add only two things to it. One is if you look at it from an analyst perspective, not the organizational perspective. I mean, the organization wants testing to drive improvement in whatever it's doing. One thing I do think, as someone who comes out of the analytics community, I think we often forget how important experimentation can be in doing our job to answer questions we can't answer with our existing data. The broader organization does not care whether we can answer a question with existing data or experimentation, but there's a lot of challenges and a lot of times when as analysts we are given tasks where the data we have is simply not sufficient to answer the question. And a lot of times we struggle with it, we try weird ways to get at the data, when what we should be doing is going down and running a test to generate that data, because that's the right thing to do. I think that isn't a big deal to the organization. It's not what defines a successful testing program. It's not it has nothing to do with the organization. But I will say from an analytics team perspective, one thing I really look for is an analytics team's willingness to ask for an experiment instead of trying to do something with the data. And it's a different kind of success, but it's a weird little sliver of success. But at least from an analyst team perspective, I think that's what I would look for as, my relationship with an experimentation team is, will they run experiments for me, and am I willing to use them to do that? Because it's just another way to answer business questions.
Yeah, I try to sometimes explain an experiment is a SQL query, but instead of from a table, it's a view of the world.
Yeah.
So you're querying in the world in a way.
Yeah.
And that's the data set that you're trying to get.
And
your
you
query
just
from.
can't get at that data any other way a lot of the
Exactly.
time.
Exactly.
And I think getting the organization to understand that, like having this, a lot of people talk about like a culture of experimentation, right?
Yeah.
And getting that buy-in across the org, even from the developers, right? Who sometimes will have to implement something and they're like, why am I implementing this weird variation of the thing, and taking time to do that. They need to buy in too, to spend that extra time in cycles and to be able to do things. I think that's definitely important.